And to really come back to the themes and the discussions that we had here, I think the critical question for us is how do we get this done? Because you see, education for SDGs, education for sustainable development is really quite a simple concept. It's basically how do we equip the next generation of children with the knowledge of sustainable development. So basically to understand the ecosystem, to understand the systems of development, to understand the issues at both the global and local level. So that's a sustainable development knowledge. Global citizenship values. So really how to care for one another, how to understand that this is a globalized world and impact goes beyond those circles, and many other important values that go at the heart of this, of which Earth Charter has done a wonderful job instilling a lot of those values. And finally, 21st century skills. The skills that would enable them to solve a lot of the challenges that they're going to face. Because let's face it, they will face a lot of challenges. So how can we equip these individuals with the skills, with the values, and with the knowledge so that they can go to tackle their local problems and help shape a sustainable future? This is about creating a generational transformation. But I'm afraid that not all ministries of education, I'll be very frank, are as forward-thinking as the Ministry of Education of Italy, which is integrating Sustainable Development Agenda 2030 into curriculum as one core subject. Unfortunately, this just isn't on the agenda of many ministries. Many have committed to it through UNESCO, but at the local level, it has not really manifested. And this is unfortunate because I see it as one of the most important initiatives out there, and we've all referred to the importance of this. So the question here is how can we build the right tools and the right resources to be able to do this? Because there are two ways of doing this. One is through the informal mechanisms, which is to do this as an add-on education to existing education. There are challenges with this. One of the big challenges is that teachers already, their work is packed with curriculum. Coming in with another agenda and just saying, hey, do this. Firstly, teachers are not even aware that the SDGs exist. Secondly, if they're aware, they're not sure how it's relevant to them. Or in fact, many of them will be asking the question, why should I care? I've got 100 other things to do. And thirdly, now that I care, what can I do? Can I go online and decipher 30 reports filled with UN jargon and development jargon and translate that into the local context for my schools? No, no teacher has the time to do that. So really what we must do is build capacity and make it easy, I think, for teachers and for schools to do that. So of course, informal in some cases work from the schools that can take the leadership, but really we need to also think about transformation at the policy level. How can we get the ministries of education, how can we get schools to not just say, rather the Ministry of Education and school boards to not just say, yes, this is a great idea, SDG 4.7, which is about this goal, is great, but actually putting it through the curriculum. And that requires actual curriculum. It requires teacher support material. And of course, it requires teacher training. The issue is that from discussions that we've had, a lot of organizations and ministries don't know where to get started. So that's one issue that we face. And part of the reason we're working with our wonderful partners in Ghana, Morocco, and Turkey is to really do the first effort globally to take the competencies that UNESCO considers so critical, which does essentially sustainable development knowledge, global citizenship, education, and 21st century skills, and how to localize that to the local education curriculum and local education laws. Now this is critical because yes, there is a global curriculum that has been built by leading experts, but localization is what's going to make the difference. Localization and being able to integrate that into the already established work streams. Some curriculums in certain countries take 10 years to review. So we cannot build an entire new curriculum from the start. So it's a matter of integration. And integration requires local research and local knowledge from institutions and organizations and experts who already understand that context, not done just at the UNESCO at the global level. We're there to provide the framework and support and bring this research together, but really the local component is going to be critical, and that's why we have leading organizations on the ground within these countries doing this. But I think one of the most exciting things is once we develop this research, once we're able to drill down and find out what is the process of localization, that is essentially a toolkit. That is a resource for ministries of education. So the next Minister of Education that comes up to us and says, how can I get the SDGs into my curriculum? We have a process and we have experts who would have done it. And this is, I think, a priority for us on how to create this transformation. And we learned this. We learned this important point of prioritization and localization through the work that we did with the IB. Now, IB, the International Baccalaureate, is a massive network of schools from around the world. In fact, there are approximately 5,000 schools. There are 1 million students. They're across 160 countries, and quite a centralized curriculum. And we worked with them, and we tried to learn from them, and essentially we tried to help them integrate the SDGs into their curriculum. And what we found was once they had accepted the concept, once they understood its importance, they did it themselves. They didn't need us to go through every subject and integrate, and that's because they understood their curriculum best, and they understood how it would work and manifest best to their work. And this is really the same idea, is how do we provide the framework and allow the local institutions to draw the work to be able to do this. But then we also need the global push for this. Because once we have developed a toolkit, we need countries to actually take it seriously. And this is why we mentioned there is a 4.7 working group or task force of leading experts and leading policymakers who will make a push for this. But I also want to hear from experience that others have had in the field on this particular issue, and how we think as a group we can push for this, and what sort of experience and expertise we can contribute towards this. And I just want to, with that, open the floor. Down the back, in the front, and then there.
Thank you. I'm Gloria. I'm a member of the European Youth Parliament. And I believe that aside from the struggle that we are already taking to try to convince the government to implement education in their curricula, we should take into consideration the outward approach. So an approach that goes bottom up instead of top down. In my opinion, young people are more and more aware of sustainability and the challenges that the world nowadays is facing. And young people, as we are here, have the power of changing things, and we just need to enable them to take actions. And how can we do this? In my opinion, the world is full of NGOs and associations and foundations that works in the field of sustainability, and that would be up to work with youngsters in order to not just educate them, but to empower them to make change. And once we are able to connect these NGOs to the young population, that's when we're going to be able to change things, in my opinion. Because once students get up and go up to the professor council or to the school council asking for making changes in the curriculum, asking for making changes in the basically also organizational issues that there are in schools and in the university, that's when we start a positive cycle. I'm the project manager of the international session of the European Youth Parliament. And what we're trying to do, we're trying to put forward SDGs in front of 350 young Europeans that are leaders in their communities, and we are trying to teach them what they are about and to ask them to find solutions that will be viable on a global level, but also on a local one. And once you empower young leaders, they will be able to shape their own communities and to shape their own institutions. And I think that this is an approach that we should take into consideration while finding solutions. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nikhil Seth. In this intergenerational dialogue, I'm a little towards the later side of these generations, but I want to build on what Gloria was saying, especially for younger people, because I see much of this audience is much younger. And I wanted to focus on one aspect of all these goals we establish. You know, many of us feel, the younger people especially, that these SDGs belong to someone else, their implementation. They belong to presidents of universities, they belong to CEOs, they belong to leaders of civil society organizations and so on. We don't personalize it and see how can we have our own personal Agenda 2030s. And if you start running down the list of goals and try and personalize that, let me give you some examples. If you look at poverty, how many people in your own lives are you going to restore a sense of dignity to? Look at consumption or pollution. How many clothes am I going to buy? How many shoes am I going to buy? How many cars am I going to buy? How many iPhones am I going to change? If you look at the pollution of air, water, use of plastics, each one of us can personalize the 2030 agenda and be a role model in the implementation of these agendas. So this belongs to us, and how we role model it, how we use it as a tool for expressing leadership, that's going to be very important if we are really going to realize all this collectively. Of course, there's a role for leadership. Of course, there's a role for ministers and prime ministers and presidents and so on. But each one of us and how we develop these personalized Agenda 2030s is going to be a real challenge.
Thank you for saying that. How do we answer the call for ministers?
First of all, I would like to thank my brother Sam Loney for inviting me to this wonderful event and the whole team. I might be I'm gonna drift a bit from the main topic because I'm bringing to this platform a cry for help. Yes, it is a cry of environmental help that is happening in my country. This country that the Saint Pope John Paul II called it a message of unity and peace. And this message, what is supposed to be in the eyes of Pope John Paul II, a message of unity among different sects, a message of peace, turned out to be a message of lack of governance and corruption. And this corrupted system has led to the occurrence of more than 100 wildfire incidents in the last 24 hours in Lebanon. Such a corrupted system is not, we were talking in this, like the last 3 hours about the lack of financing, about innovation. But what I believe happening in my country is not an issue of lack of financing. It's not an issue of lack of innovation. There's a lack of a willingness to implement right policies and the SDGs. So unfortunately, the global media outlets, as usual, were silent about these type of incidents. And I would like to send also a message to the people of my country and to the government. There's no doubt that the Syrian refugees crisis, for example, worsened the situation. But we have been blaming the regional interventions in our policies. And in the end, we started blaming each other for not building in a very efficient system. And when we start to blame others, it means that we are avoiding the truth about ourselves. Therefore, from this platform, I'm asking you, young leaders, in this world. Let us create a digital lobby on social media to push these type of incidents further to the whole world for us to raise more awareness. Thank you very much for listening.
Beth, then Ben. Yep.
Hi everybody. To introduce myself, I'm the National Coordinator for SDSN Canada. I work with youth across Canada in universities and institutions to advance the SDGs. One of the points that really stood out to me today when we were talking about the SDGs in education is that there is a lack of the political, the government side and education coming together for the SDGs. I truly, truly believe that we can't implement the SDGs unless our governments are for them and have an agenda for them. So I would like to ask a question to everybody in the room and to maybe some people that can come up to me and help answer this question later, is how do we get policymakers to come in the room and be a part of the conversations when we're educating people about the SDGs? Because young people, and I felt this growing up as well, I didn't really realize that the impact that I had is not really that substantial unless the government really approves of it. I live in a country in Canada where we subsidize the fossil fuel industry and we are one of the biggest contributors to climate change, and I am incredibly sorry for what my country is doing to the rest of the world, but my government does not understand how much impact they have on the environment, and they must stop subsidizing these industries. So how can we get them to listen to youth through using the SDG agenda and by getting them in the room when we're educating people, that young people realize that their knowledge can actually lead to action to move and shake their countries. And because we are woke, we are young people, we understand the issue, but we must get the older generation and our governments to listen to that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. A one size does not fit all for, even if we have a curriculum, as you mentioned, does not work for all ministers. How can we get the SDGs into our curriculum? Answering the call by professors in universities. I've just noted that we have 4 or 5 people here organizing different curricula. Maybe they're all affiliated with SDSN. This is brilliant. I love that. That's excellent. That opportunity is there, but we also know from experience that it does require, at some point, managing a network where we push out curriculum. Our experience has been, hey, if you want to get something like data science into universities, there is pushback from faculty occasionally. I know, you're raising your eyebrows. Until Angela Merkel steps in and says, this is now a national priority. Okay, give it to me. We want it. That's great. We can be a rollout channel, but we want to make sure that we're teaming up in the right ways for this as well. What Ely mentioned as a digital lobby, though maybe you didn't mean it that way, and what you just mentioned, Beth, I was very inspired about that. When the youth are calling for this, you have a voice, you have an opportunity to get those leaders involved. I just wanted to hope that we consolidate these efforts. I'm trying to wrap my mind around and connect all these dots, but there is an opportunity for us, and we can also work from the corporate side as well to lobby from the private sector for, hey, this is what we need from graduates from higher education. This is what we need for applicants into higher education from secondary and primary schools. Therefore, educators, policymakers, mayors, ministers, there's that. So we can help put pressure on those sides as well.
Just going back to what Sam summarized, and I think he's put all the dots together. We started this conversation last year here at the symposium, and it is difficult to convince ministers of education, because I have tried it. I think a lot of you have done the same. We can start, but we start small because we do it as an individual. What worked is we've seen that Stanford University, when they built the curriculum for design thinking, a lot of the governments and the country have actually taken that. They have paid them to mentor and train faculties in universities and also in governmental institutions to teach design thinking based on the Stanford curriculum. And I think that's exactly what we should do. We should have a curriculum that is applicable to all, and then work with, perhaps if it's design thinking and entrepreneurship from Stanford, if it's government's already working on it. My government has put a mandate by the Ministry of Education that it has to be taught in every single university. Maybe work together and see how we can connect these dots. And I think that's how we should do it, because a lot of people around here are passionate about education, and not just by raising awareness, but by teaching it. I know Tatum was doing something as well in her high school. I don't know, maybe a couple of words of you saying what you're doing, because that's very inspirational. If everybody starts to do that, then what do we do together in building this curriculum? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sherry. Just a quick comment. There is actually a wonderful curriculum put by a Harvard professor, Professor Fernando Reimers, on the SDGs from grade 1 to 12 across every subject, and quite a comprehensive one. And that's exactly the one we're going to be using to essentially map out and localize in the context. So I think that's definitely the right thinking, and would love to talk more about this. If we can just keep comments very brief, just one comment down the back, then we come for a quick reflection from the panel, and we'll wrap up.
Thank you so much. My name is Marlou. I'm the CEO of international charity World Merit. And we actually work with a lot of what's just been said just by working with community on the ground and on a grassroots level. So what I believe the biggest problem is just access to opportunity. And even when we talk, it was said this morning as well, when we talk about whether it's schools, high school, or universities, there's so many people who won't even have access to that. And as great as these kind of conferences are, where we're all sitting here enjoying this great opportunity, I know that there are many people who should have been here today who are not, just because they weren't given a visa. So I think some of the comments that were made today were so true about we need the government, and we need full system thinking about what in our society, who plays what responsibility, and how do we make sure that we increase that access to opportunity. Because I think one of our biggest problems is actually the underutilization of talent. And so what we're trying to do with World Merit is really empowering a community of people to build their confidence and raise their aspirations, so that they have the confidence to go into their community, assess the needs, and act upon them. And the most interesting that I always find is that it's, when we work with these communities, it's almost as if they were waiting for approval to go out and do things. And as soon as you tell them, it's okay, they're full of ideas, and, they go and they fly. And, that shouldn't be the case. But the good thing about that, I think, is that they don't need to get that approval from the government. They can get that from peers. With all the organizations and the NGOs out there, sometimes just lending them your credibility and your name and your brand is enough approval for them to go out and do incredible things. So, I believe it's really the combination of those two things. And, I just wanted us all to take a moment to really realize that as diverse of a group we are here today, we're still missing out on incredibly talented and capable people.
Great, thank you very much. We've only got a couple. I can just ask to cut out the clapping so we can get through it quickly. Sorry, I just want to make sure we get push on. Just a quick reflection from the panel. We've got a couple of minutes if we can just keep it brief. Thank you.
Thank you. Very briefly, I think that one of the key success would be to go from the theory to practical, and to be able to show success story. And we do have one in Marrakesh, because the foundation is involved in protection our palm grove in Marrakesh, which is very ancient palm grove. And actually we managed to create an ecosystem that helped us with the local people, who are fragile people, to protect the palm tree. Beside this, we gave them sustainable agriculture. So the men start to do eco-agriculture farming, and we took their spouses and we gave them accounting lessons, so they became their account of their husbands. And we have a chain of hotels, a network of hotels inside the palm grove, and we encourage them to buy their vegetables and fruits from that farmers. And then we have a network of eco-schools, and we encourage their children to go to that schools and to learn what is protection of environment, what are the SDG, and this is practical. They live, they can see their fathers, they can see their mothers, they can see the neighbors, and also it improves the quality of their life with sustainable knowledge. So it is very much important to give a real success story and not to be just in theory. I think that would be one of the key success. Thank you.
Thank you. We had a cry for help. I'd like to also end on a shout for hope. Every day I receive pictures and messages from our advocates on the ground that go into these schools, that talk with these children. And I can tell you, like, I check that before going to sleep every night, and that gives me a lot of hope. As our colleague over there said, it's also about empowering the young people to do this work and just giving them this institutional support. Our 450 advocates, the only thing they needed was a month of training and a bit of support from us, and now they are in their local communities getting that work done. And it's, for me, it fills me of hope every night, or when we receive the candidature for our cohort of advocates, to see how many young people wanted to get involved and were really, really ready to get involved. Or when I receive emails like this high school students in Turkey, or many, many more that I receive. I just wanted to also end on this shout of hope, because there is tremendous energy and the young people are ready to go. So let's use schools, let's leverage this, let's leverage all the networks that we have here, let's see together how we can all together leverage the networks that we already have, so that we make this lesson that Sam have mentioned, this lesson plans that really cover all the SDGs that are localizable to any country, so that any teacher can use them to be able to empower the students, because they are ready for it. So it's our job as leaders in this room to make sure that these lesson plans reach the students, so that the students can actually start do what they want to do.
Great, thank you. Yeah, very briefly.
Thank you, everyone. I also just want to mention the importance of having these discussions outside of our work field. So like talking to our families, talking to our friends who have children in schools, who are teachers, so just getting the message out there so that they can also demand these curriculums in their local communities.
Thank you very much. And I just wanted to share one quick one, which is I saw last night a post pictured from one of the advocates that we trained that's pushing the SDGs in schools. He was on a motorcycle. I believe he was in Ghana, and on the way to visit the school, he had just taken a motorcycle and he had taken a selfie while on that motorcycle, and he had basically done a selfie journey the entire way into the school, to the principal's office, into the classroom, and it was just a surreal experience of just this person that we didn't know a few months ago, who we just gave a few tools to, and they, because of their passion and interest, are now going school to school in the countryside and starting to really socialize this idea. So it's wonderful to see, and hopefully we can continue to work on initiatives such as this.